I was 43 minutes into the most important presentation of my career when Derek Caldwell burst through the conference room door and said the words that would change everything. "You're done here, Nell. Pack your desk." The three Department of Defense officials across the table froze. I stood there, laser pointer still in my hand, unable to process what was happening. General Thompson closed his laptop with a decisive snap. "If she goes, we go," he said, his voice calm but absolute. He stood, and his entire team followed. They walked past Derek without a word. And I found myself following them out, my legs moving on autopilot, while my brain screamed that I'd just lost my job and somehow taken an $800 million contract down with me. Let me back up and tell you how I got to that moment, because none of this makes sense without understanding what came before. I'd worked at Sentinel Defense Solutions for 6 years. Started as a junior analyst, fresh out of grad school. Worked my way up to senior project manager, through sheer determination and 80-hour weeks. The company had 93 employees and specialized in classified cybersecurity solutions for federal agencies. We were based in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, close enough to the Pentagon that we could bike there if we wanted to. Harrison Caldwell built Sentinel Defense from nothing 30 years ago. He was one of those brilliant, driven founders who understood both the technical side and the business side. A rare combination. Had taken the company from a garage startup to a major player in defense contracting. Everyone who worked there respected him deeply. Then, 2 years ago, his son Derek joined the company. Derek was 34, with an expensive haircut and 3 failed startups behind him. He had his father's confidence but none of his competence. Harrison had been semi-retired for the past 18 months, traveling frequently with his wife, and had left Derek as acting head of operations. That's when everything started to go wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about Project Nightshade. Project Nightshade was an $800 million contract over 5 years with the Department of Defense. It involved developing classified network security for some of the most sensitive military communication systems in the country. It spent 14 months developing the proprietary algorithm that made our bid viable. 14 months of working until midnight, of missing my daughter's bedtime, of sacrificing weekends and holidays. My husband Daniel would find me asleep at my desk at 3 in the morning, my face pressed against printouts of code. The algorithm was elegant, if I can say that without sounding arrogant. It solved a problem that had stumped the entire defense industry for years. How do you create a security system that adapts in real time to new threats while maintaining the stability required for military operations? My solution involved a form of predictive modeling combined with quantum-resistant encryption that could learn and evolve without human intervention. It successfully passed all the preliminary reviews. The DoD technical teams had put it through every test they could devise. It held up. Today's presentation was the final approval before contract signing. This was supposed to be a formality, a victory lap. Except Derek had other plans. See, for the past 18 months, Derek had been systematically taking credit for my work. Every innovation I developed, every breakthrough I achieved, ended up presented at board meetings with Derek's name attached. He'd exclude me from those meetings, then show up afterward to thank me for my support role. Support role. For work that was entirely mine. He'd changed my access codes to project files 3 times, claiming it was for security reasons. Head hired his fraternity friend Marcus as co-lead on my projects despite Marcus having no relevant qualifications. Marcus' real job was to report everything back to Derek and undermine me in meetings. When I'd point out technical errors in Marcus' work, Derek would accuse me of not being a team player. Last year, Derek promised me a promotion to Vice President of Technical Operations. I'd earned it. Everyone knew it. Then he gave the position to Marcus instead. When I asked why, Derek said I needed to work on my leadership presence. Leadership presence. I was leading a team of 6 analysts who would have followed me into fire. I had documentation of everything. Every email where Derek took credit for my work. Every meeting where Marcus undermined me. Every time Derek changed my access without justification. But who was I supposed to report it to? Harrison was traveling constantly. and Derek had made sure to cultivate relationships with the board members who remained. The morning of the presentation, Derek called an emergency meeting at 7 a.m. I showed up thinking it was last-minute prep. Instead, he demanded I hand over all my presentation materials. He was going to take point, he said. He was going to be the face of Project Nightshare to the client. I refused. This was my work. My expertise. The client had specifically requested me. That's when Derek threatened my job, said I could hand over the materials or start looking for new employment. I stood firm. The client had requested me specifically, I told him. General Thompson had been clear about that in his communications. Derek looked like he wanted to explode, but he grudgingly agreed to let me present. I should have known then that he was planning something. The presentation started at 9 a.m. General Thompson arrived with his team: 2 acquisition specialists, a technical advisor, and a security officer. They were serious people who didn't waste time on pleasantries. They wanted to understand exactly what they were buying and whether it would work. I presented flawlessly. I knew this material inside and out because I'd created it. Every question they asked, I answered with precision and confidence. When the technical advisor asked about the quantum-resistant encryption protocols, I walked him through the mathematics on the whiteboard. When the security officer questioned the adaptation speed, I showed him the test results from our simulations. Derek sat in the corner of the room, getting increasingly agitated. I could see him checking his phone, shifting in his seat, his jaw clenched tight. I ignored him and focused on the client. At the 43-minute mark, I was explaining the proprietary Caldwell algorithm. Named after the company, it was the centerpiece of the entire system, the innovation that made everything else possible. General Thompson was nodding, making notes, clearly impressed. That's when Derek snapped. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He strode to the front of the room and said those words that would echo in my mind for days afterward. "You're done here, Nell. Pack your desk." But here's what Derek didn't know. Here's the detail that makes this whole story make sense. 6 months earlier, I'd been invited to brief Pentagon officials at a classified security summit. Derek hadn't been cleared to attend because of the classification level. I'd spent 3 hours in a secure facility answering technical questions from various military officials about emerging threats in cybersecurity. General Thompson had been in that room, had asked me questions that I was the only person present qualified to answer. After that briefing, General Thompson personally requested that I be the lead contact for any future DoD projects with Sentinel Defense. Had sent that request directly to Harrison, not to Derek. Harrison had agreed. Derek never knew about any of this because he didn't have the clearance to access that level of communication. So when General Thompson stood up in that conference room and said, "If she goes, we go," he wasn't being chivalrous or making a point about business etiquette. He was protecting a critical national security asset. Me, my knowledge, my expertise. And Derek had just thrown it all away because his ego couldn't handle me being the center of attention. The walk from the conference room to my desk was surreal. I moved in a bubble of shock, barely aware of my surroundings. Security had been called. 2 guards flanked me. Not hostile, but present. Derek must have had them on standby, like Head planned this. General Thompson caught up with me in the parking lot. His team had already gotten into their black SUV, but Head told them to wait. He walked over to where I stood by my car, still trying to process what had just happened. "Miss Hartley," he said, his voice gentle but firm. That was unconscionable. I couldn't speak. My throat was tight, and I was terrified that if I opened my mouth, I'd start crying. "I've been in the military for 32 years, he continued. "I've seen a lot of politics, a lot of incompetence, a lot of people more concerned with their image than the mission. But that was beyond the pale." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. His personal card. Not his official Pentagon contact information. "Your algorithm is the only one that passed our classified red team testing," he said. "We threw everything at it. Had our best people trying to break it for 3 weeks. It held. That's your work, not Caldwell Defense's." "Certainly not that, boys." He paused, looking back at the building. "I want to work with you, Miss Hartley. Wherever you end up." The DoD has options for contracting with individuals, with small businesses, with competitors of your current employer. You have friends in high places who recognize talent. Don't forget that. I finally found my voice. Thank you, General. He nodded and walked back to the SUV. I watched them drive away, then got in my car and just sat there, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Back inside, I could imagine the chaos. Derek trying to salvage the meeting. The client gone. His father's life work potentially destroyed because he couldn't control his jealousy for 43 more minutes. I drove back to the building because I still needed to collect my things. Security was waiting for me at my desk. My team of 6 analysts was there too, and some of them were crying. These were brilliant people who I'd mentored, who'd worked alongside me on Project Nightshade. They knew exactly what had just happened and what it meant. Gabrielle, my closest colleague, slipped me a thumb drive while the security guard wasn't looking. She pressed it into my palm and whispered, "Everything you'll need." We copied it yesterday when Derek changed the locks on the server room again. I closed my fingers around it, understanding immediately. Documentation, emails, project files, everything I'd need to prove what had really happened. 30 of us are ready to quit, Gabrielle said quietly. We're just waiting for you to land somewhere. I couldn't speak. I just hugged her while security pretended not to notice. Marcus swaggered by as I was packing my photographs and my daughter's drawings from my desk. "Guess Derek was right about you not being a team player," he said, smirking. I didn't respond. I just kept packing, maintaining what dignity I had left. My career was imploding, but I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Security escorted me out through the lobby. Colleagues stared. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others looked angry on my behalf. The receptionist, an older woman named Dorothy who'd been with the company since the beginning, mouthed "I'm sorry" as I passed. The drive home was a blur. My phone kept buzzing with messages, colleagues expressing outrage and support, questions about what happened, offers of help. I ignored all of it. I couldn't talk to anyone yet. Then my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't explain this to her right now, couldn't handle her well-meaning questions and concerns. My thoughts raced. The mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks. Our health insurance was through my job. I was the primary breadwinner. Daniel was finishing his dissertation. His PhD in history, had been writing for 3 years, teaching 1 class a semester to contribute, but mostly depending on my income. We had a 3-year-old daughter, Emma. Daycare cost $1,400 a month. We had bills, car payments, credit card debt. The panic started to set in, tightening around my chest like a vice. I pulled over into a parking lot because I couldn't drive safely anymore. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe, trying not to completely fall apart. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Nell, this is Harrison Caldwell." I froze. The CEO, Derek's father, calling me directly. "Someone sent me a video of what happened," he said. His voice was strained, exhausted. "I'm in Singapore right now. I'm getting on the first flight back. Don't sign anything. Don't talk to anyone. I'll fix this." "Mr. Caldwell," I started. But the connection crackled and cut out. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. I sat there in that parking lot, the phone dead in my hand, not knowing what to believe or what to hope for. The CEO said he'd fix it, but Derek was his son. Blood was thicker than water. And even if Harrison wanted to help me, what could he really do? Derek had acted in front of witnesses. The client had walked out. The damage was done. I finally drove home and found Daniel in the kitchen with Emma. She was coloring at the table, completely absorbed in turning a princess purple. Daniel took one look at my face and knew something was terribly wrong. "What happened?" I broke down and told him everything. The presentation, Derek bursting in, the firing, the client walking out, all of it, spilling out in a jumbled rush. Daniel's face went from confused to shocked to furious. He wanted to call a lawyer immediately, wanted to sue, wanted to burn the whole company down. I explained that it wasn't that simple. Virginia was an at-will employment state. They could fire me for almost any reason. And who would I appeal to? Derek was acting CEO with board support. His parents are wealthy, Daniel said. We can ask them for a loan, just to get us through until you find something else. I shook my head. Daniel's parents already disapproved of how much I worked, how much time I spent away from Emma. His mother had made pointed comments about whether it was really necessary for me to have such a demanding career. A loan would come with conditions, with I told you so's, with pressure for me to step back and be a stay-at-home mother. I wasn't ready to admit defeat like that. Emma climbed down from her chair and came over to me. "Mommy sad?" she asked, her little face concerned. I picked her up and held her tight, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Mommy's okay." But I wasn't okay. I was terrified. Terrified of losing everything we'd built. Terrified of not being able to provide for my family. Terrified that Derek had won. The phone rang again. "Unknown number," I answered, my heart pounding. It was Harrison again, the connection clearer this time. He was in the airport in Tokyo, catching a connecting flight. He'd be back in 24 hours. He wanted to meet me at my home, have a private conversation where we could talk freely. "I need to hear your side of this," he said. "Derek has told me his version. Now I need yours." I agreed to meet him, but after I hung up, doubt crept in. What if Harrison didn't believe me? What if he sided with his son? What if this meeting was just a formality before they came after me legally? That evening dragged on forever. Daniel and I sat up late, going through our finances, trying to figure out how long we could last without my income. The answer was not long. Maybe 6 weeks before we started missing payments. 8 weeks before we'd have to make hard decisions about the house. I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the presentation over and over. What could I have done differently? Should I have just handed Derek the materials and let him take credit one more time? Should I have quit months ago when the writing was on the wall? At 2 in the morning, I got up and went downstairs. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table in the dark. That's when I noticed the package on the front porch. I could see it through the window by the door. A small box that hadn't been there when we went to bed. I opened the door cautiously. The package was addressed to me, no return address. I brought it inside and opened it carefully. Inside was a flash drive and a note written in block letters. "You need to see this." I plugged the flash drive into my laptop with shaking hands. It contained security camera footage from inside Sentinel Defense, time-stamped 3 days earlier at 2:17 a.m. The footage showed Derek and Marcus in my locked office. They were at my computer, clearly tampering with files. The footage was crystal clear. You could see them planting something, creating the security violations they'd later accuse me of. Someone inside the company was helping me. Someone who had access to security systems, and who wanted the truth to come out. I watched the footage 3 times, my mind racing. This changed everything. This was proof of Derek's malice. Proof that the security violations were manufactured. But who sent it? And why now? And most importantly, could I trust it? Or was this some elaborate trap? I sat there at my kitchen table as the sun started to rise, holding evidence that could save me or destroy me, and I had no idea which it would be. The next morning, I woke to my phone exploding with notifications. I grabbed it, still groggy, and saw hundreds of messages flooding in. Then I saw why. Derek had sent a company-wide email at 6:30 a.m. The subject line read, "Security breach and personnel action." The email claimed that I had absconded with classified materials, violated multiple NDAs, and breached security protocols. It stated that the company was pursuing criminal charges and had reported me to federal authorities. It implied I'd been fired for cause due to security violations. My professional reputation was being destroyed in real time. I could see the email had been sent not just to company staff but to partners, clients, industry contacts. Derek was making sure that no one in the defense contracting world would touch me. Daniel found me sitting on the bedroom floor, staring at my phone. He read the email over my shoulder and immediately started searching for lawyers. Within an hour, we had an appointment with Patricia Jiang, an employment attorney that Gabrielle had recommended. Patricia's office was in Alexandria, a small suite in a building full of other small practices. She was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed and efficient. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. I showed her everything. The emails documenting Derek's pattern of taking credit, the recordings I'd made of various meetings, the thumb drive Gabrielle had given me, the security footage from the anonymous package. Patricia reviewed it all methodically. The case for wrongful termination is strong, she finally said. But litigation takes years and costs money you probably don't have. These cases average 18 months to resolution, and that's if we settle. If we go to trial, add another year. My heart sank. I couldn't wait that long. But then Patricia noticed something. She was looking at Derek's personnel file, which Gabrielle had thoughtfully included on the thumb drive. She frowned, leaned closer to her screen, then looked up at me. Did they actually run his security clearance? She asked. What do you mean? This says he has secret clearance, Patricia said, pointing at the screen. But the processing dates don't match his hire date. Usually clearance takes 6 to 8 months to process. His file shows he was hired and immediately had access to classified projects. That's not how it works. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I'd never thought to question Derek's clearance. He was the CEO's son. I'd assumed had been properly vetted. I need to check something, I said. I called James, a friend from grad school who now worked as a background investigator for the DoD. We'd kept in touch over the years, occasionally meeting for coffee when our schedules aligned. I caught him on his lunch break. James, I need a favor. Off the record, can you check someone's clearance status? He hesitated. Nell, you know I'm not supposed to do that. I know, but it's important. Really important. I gave him Derek's information. He said he'd see what he could find out and call me back. I didn't expect to hear from him for days. But he called back within 3 hours. Nell. His voice was serious. There's no clearance. An application was submitted but withdrawn before processing completed. He never went through the investigation. My blood ran cold. You're sure? I'm looking at the database right now. Derek Caldwell. Date of birth matching what you gave me. Application submitted 23 months ago, withdrawn after preliminary review. No clearance was ever granted. That meant Derek had been sitting in meetings with classified information for 2 years without proper clearance. That meant Derek had been accessing secure systems illegally. That meant every contract he'd touched could be invalidated. That meant Sentinel Defense could lose all its federal contracts if this came out. That meant I had leverage. James, I need you to document this. Officially. He was quiet for a long moment. This could end careers, Nell. Including mine if it comes out that I looked without authorization. I know. And I wouldn't ask if it wasn't critical. But people's lives are at stake. Jobs. National security. He sighed. I'll send you a formal inquiry result. It'll be on official letterhead. But Nell, be careful with this. You're playing with fire. After I hung up, I sat there processing what I'd learned. Then I went back to the thumb drive and started digging deeper. Gabrielle had been thorough. She'd included everything she could access. I found an email chain between Derek and Marcus that made my hands shake with rage. They'd been planning to force me out for months. The plan was to systematically undermine me, document supposed instances of insubordination, build a case for termination, and then fire me right before Project Nightshade was finalized. Derek wanted his name as the lead on the project. He wanted the credit, the recognition, the glory, but the timeline had accelerated. From the emails, I could see Derek had gotten impatient. My presentation to General Thompson was supposed to be his moment to step in and take over. But I'd done too well. The client had been too impressed with me. Derek had panicked and made an impulsive decision. His impulsivity might be what saved me, but my situation was getting worse in other ways. Bill collectors started calling about credit cards I didn't know were maxed out. Turns out it'd been quietly managing debt from Daniel's PhD expenses for longer than it admitted to him. The mortgage payment was due in 10 days. Job searches weren't promising because Derek's email had poisoned my reputation across the industry. That evening, Daniel's parents called. They'd heard about what happened through Daniel, and they wanted to help. They offered a loan, $60,000 to get us through, but the conditions were clear, even though they didn't say them explicitly. I should step back from my career, focus on family, be the mother Emma deserved. I refused, as politely as I could. Daniel was frustrated with me. "Why are you being so stubborn?" he asked. "It's just money." But it wasn't just money. It was my independence, my sense of self, my refusal to let Derek win by forcing me out of the career it built. That night, Harrison called again. He was in Tokyo, about to board his flight home. He'd be landing in 24 hours. He wanted to meet at my house, somewhere private where we could talk, without corporate attorneys or board members present. "I need to understand what really happened," he said. "I need to hear it from you." I agreed, but I wasn't sure whether to trust him. He was Derek's father. Biology had a way of making people overlook things they'd never tolerate in strangers. But then something happened that changed everything. At 9:30 p.m., my doorbell rang. Daniel answered it while I was putting Emma to bed. I heard his surprised voice, heard him invite someone in. When I came downstairs, I found a package on the kitchen table and Daniel looking confused. "A courier just delivered this," he said. "Wouldn't say who sent it. Just said it was urgent." I opened the package carefully. Inside was another flash drive, this one labeled in neat handwriting. "Watch this. Then destroy it." I plugged it into my laptop. Daniel stood behind me, watching over my shoulder. The video started playing. It was more security footage, but this time from different cameras. The timestamp was from 3 days ago, the same night as the previous footage. But this showed more context. It showed Derek and Marcus arriving at the office at 1:45 a.m. It showed them entering my office with a keycard. It showed them at my computer for 47 minutes. It showed them leaving with what looked like a small hard drive. But there was audio on this footage. And the audio captured everything. "We plant the files on her system," Derek was saying. "Make it look like she's been copying classified documents to external drives. Then we report it. Security violation. Grounds for immediate termination." "What if she has backups?" Marcus asked. "Doesn't matter. We control the narrative. By the time she can defend herself, the damage is done. Her reputation will be destroyed. No one will hire her." "What about your dad?" "He's in Singapore with my mom. By the time he gets back, it'll be done. He'll be angry, but he'll accept it eventually. He always does." The footage continued, showing them methodically planting evidence, creating false files, manipulating timestamps, building an elaborate fraud. Someone inside Sentinel Defense had recorded this. Someone had access to security systems with audio. Someone wanted me to have this evidence. But who? And why hadn't they come forward before? And more importantly, what did they want in return? I watched the footage 3 times, memorizing every detail. Then, following the instructions, I copied it to an encrypted backup and destroyed the flash drive, physically smashing it and throwing the pieces in different trash bins around the neighborhood. When I got back home, Daniel was pacing the kitchen. "This is insane," he kept saying. "This is absolutely insane." He was right. This was beyond workplace politics, beyond corporate maneuvering. This was criminal. Fraud. Evidence tampering. Conspiracy. Derek and Marcus had committed serious crimes, but I still didn't know who my anonymous ally was or what they wanted from me, and I had no idea if I could trust them or if this was some elaborate setup. All I knew was that in 24 hours, Harrison Caldwell would be sitting in my kitchen, and I'd have to decide how much to tell him and how much to hold back. I barely slept that night. I kept thinking about Derek's words on that recording. "He always does." Meaning Harrison always forgave him. always accepted his behavior eventually. How many times had Derek done something like this before? How many times had his father bailed him out, protected him, enabled him? And if Harrison had a pattern of protecting his son, why would this time be any different? Harrison Caldwell arrived at my house at exactly 10 a.m., as promised. He drove himself in a modest sedan, not the company car with a driver. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red-rimmed, his usually impeccable suit rumpled. Had flown commercial for 18 hours to get here. Daniel had taken Emma to the park to give us privacy. I invited Harrison into the kitchen and made coffee. We sat across from each other at the same table where my family ate breakfast every morning, and I told him everything. I didn't hold back. I showed him the documentation of Derek's pattern of stealing credit for my work. I showed him the emails between Derek and Marcus planning my termination. I showed him the security footage of them planting evidence in my office. I showed him Derek's fake clearance documentation. I showed him General Thompson's card and played the voicemail where the general said he wanted to work with me wherever I landed. Harrison watched it all in silence. His face went through stages: shock, rage, grief. He was watching his son's betrayal in real time, and it was breaking him. When I finished, he sat for a long moment without speaking. Then he said, "Tell me about the 4 people Derek forced out before you." I blinked in surprise. "You know about that?" I suspected. I was traveling, but I'm not blind. Thomas, Patricia, Jerome, and Sarah. 4 talented people who suddenly resigned within a year of Derek taking operational control. I thought it was coincidence. I didn't want to believe otherwise. "It wasn't coincidence," I said quietly. Harrison put his head in his hands. When he looked up again, he looked 10 years older. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Derek has done this before. Not here. At his previous companies. He told me everything. The first startup. Derek had embezzled from investors. Small amounts at first, then larger. Harrison had paid them back quietly, made it go away. The second startup. A female employee filed a sexual harassment complaint. Derek claimed it was a misunderstanding. Harrison settled for an undisclosed sum. The third startup. Fraud investigation. Derek had been billing clients for work never performed. Harrison had used his connections to get the investigation dropped. "I gave him one final chance," Harrison said. "I told him this was it. Start at the bottom of the family company, prove himself, or I'd cut him off completely." I wanted to be angry at Harrison for enabling Derek. But looking at his face, I saw genuine anguish. He was a father who'd made terrible choices out of love. "There's something else," Harrison continued. His voice dropped. "My wife, Derek's mother, has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We've been in Singapore and Tokyo for experimental treatment. That's why I've been gone so much. She has maybe 6 months left." I felt my anger deflate. "I'm so sorry. I thought giving Derek responsibility would help him grow up. I thought if he had real stakes, real consequences, had finally become the man I'd always hoped he could be. Instead, I gave him enough rope to hang himself. And apparently, enough rope to hang you too." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Harrison said, "I want to fix this. I want to make this right. But you need to know the complications." He explained that Derek had convinced board members to grant him 30% equity in the company. It had happened while Harrison was overseas, through a series of proxy votes and strategic manipulation. Derek now owned a significant piece of Sentinel Defense. "If I fire him outright, Derek can force a board vote," Harrison said. "He has 3 allies on the board, friends from his country club who think he's a brilliant entrepreneur. With his 30% equity and their votes, he could deadlock the company, force a sale, dissolution. 93 people would lose their jobs." "So what are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying I need time to do this right. I need a strategy. And I need your help." He offered me my job back. Not just my old position, but a promotion to Chief Technical Officer. He offered a public apology, compensation for lost wages, and equity in the company. But he couldn't fire Derek immediately. He needed to build a case, get board support, do it legally so Derek couldn't challenge it. Daniel came home then with Emma. Harrison lit up when he saw her, and for a moment I saw the grandfather rather than the CEO. Emma, bless her, immediately started telling him about the ducks at the park. She had no idea she was talking to one of the most powerful people in the defense industry. After Emma went to watch cartoons, Daniel joined our conversation. He thought I should refuse Harrison's offer. He thought I should take General Thompson's suggestion and work for a competitor, or even go independent. I was torn. Part of me wanted to walk away. Let Derek destroy the company. Let Harrison deal with the consequences of his choices. But I thought about Gabrielle, about my team, about the 93 people who'd done nothing wrong. I thought about the important work we did for national security. Harrison, I said slowly. Tell me about Derek's clearance. Harrison frowned. What about it? I explained what James had told me. That Derek's clearance was never completed, never granted. That had been accessing classified information for 2 years without authorization. Harrison went pale. Are you absolutely certain? I showed him the official documentation James had sent. Harrison stared at it for a long moment. This changes everything, he said quietly. This isn't just about wrongful termination or corporate politics. This is a federal crime. Every contract Derek touched could be invalidated. We could lose everything. Yes, I said. But it's also leverage. We talked strategy for another hour. Harrison needed to report the clearance issue to DoD, but doing so would trigger an investigation that could destroy the company. We needed a way to contain the damage, to prove Derek acted alone, to show the board and the government that the company itself was sound even if Derek wasn't. It felt impossible. We were talking about threading a needle while riding a roller coaster. Then my doorbell rang. Daniel went to answer it. I heard raised voices, heard Daniel say, "You need to leave. Now." I walked to the front door and my blood ran cold. Derek was there, swaying slightly, clearly drunk even though it was barely past noon. He was there to threaten me into silence. He pushed past Daniel and into my house. He didn't know his father was there. Harrison had parked around the corner and walked, not wanting to be conspicuous. Derek couldn't see into the kitchen from the entryway. Derek started talking immediately, his words slurring slightly. Need to talk to Nell. She needs to understand. This is my company, my name. She can't just embarrass me like that. Daniel tried to block him. Leave, right now, or I'm calling the police. Derek shoved him aside. Not hard, but enough. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, frightened by the shouting. Daniel immediately went to her, scooped her up, took her to her room. I stood in the hallway, facing Derek. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. He stank of whiskey. You embarrassed me in front of the client, he said. You think you're so smart. But you're nothing without Caldwell resources. Nothing. I made you. He stumbled into the living room, didn't see Harrison standing in the kitchen doorway. Harrison stayed silent, listening. I tried to keep my voice calm. Derek, you need to leave. We can talk about this later when you're sober. He laughed bitterly. Sober? Right. You know what's funny? Everyone thinks you're so perfect. Little Nell. So talented. So hardworking. But I know better. I know you're just like everyone else. Trying to take what's mine. That's when he started confessing. Everything. He admitted planting the security violations evidence. He admitted he never had proper clearance. Who needs clearance when you own the company? He said. He admitted forcing out Thomas, Patricia, Jerome, and Sarah, the 4 employees before me. Thomas thought he was so smart with his satellite encryption design, Derek said. I showed him who was smart. Patricia questioned my qualifications, questioned me. I made her life hell until she quit. Jerome actually went to my dad. Tried to tell him I was unqualified. I got rid of him before he could do any real damage. He swayed, caught himself on the back of the couch. And you're the worst of them. Acting like you're better than me. Like your little algorithm makes you special. Dad's too soft. He doesn't understand that companies need strong leaders, not bleeding hearts who worry about feelings. That's when Harrison stepped forward from the kitchen doorway. "Hello, son." Derek froze. The color drained from his face. He tried to backtrack immediately. "Dad, I didn't mean, I heard every word," Harrison said coldly. Derek's expression changed from shock to calculation to defiance, all in the space of seconds. "You gave me this company," he said. "You're never here. Someone had to run it. Someone had to make the hard decisions." "I gave you an opportunity," Harrison said. "You betrayed it." Derek's face hardened. "You can't fire me. I have the board. I have 30% equity. You fire me, and it'll deadlock the company. It'll force a sale. It'll destroy everything you built." Then he played his nuclear option. The card had been saving. "I already met with board allies," he said. "Told them Nell was selling company secrets to Aegis Systems. Showed them email chains, bank deposits. They believe me. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. They're voting to authorize a lawsuit against her. Criminal complaint. Shall be destroyed." He turned to me, his eyes cold. "Fire me, and I'll make sure she goes down. Drop the clearance issue, and I'll drop the charges against her. Your choice, Dad." He was using me as a hostage, protecting himself by threatening to destroy me. Harrison looked between us, torn. Derek was his son, his only child. But Derek had crossed every line. Then I spoke. "Derek, you should know something." I pointed to my laptop on the table. The red recording light visible. "I've been recording since you walked in." Daniel emerged from the hallway. "And I recorded from my phone too." Derek lunged for the laptop. Daniel blocked him. They struggled for a moment, and that's when we heard sirens. Daniel had called the police while he was upstairs with Emma, reporting an intruder who'd forced his way into our home. 2 patrol cars pulled up. Officers got out. Derek was escorted from my property, given a trespassing warning. Not arrested, just removed. But as the officers walked him to his car, he turned and screamed at me. "You think you won? I sent it already. Sent everything to every defense contractor in D.C. Your career is over. Even if you prove you're innocent, no one will trust you. You're finished." The officers put him in his car and watched him drive away. Harrison stood on my porch, looking like Head aged 20 years. Daniel came outside with Emma, who was crying. I knelt down and held my daughter. "It's okay, sweetie. The loud man is gone." But Derek's final words echoed in my head. Had already sent the falsified evidence to the entire industry. Even with proof of my innocence, the damage might be permanent. In defense contracting, reputation was everything. Once suspicion attached itself to you, it never quite washed off. I'd won the battle but might have lost the war. After the police left, Harrison stayed for another hour. We strategized damage control, but it felt futile. Derek had poisoned the well. Even if we proved everything was fabricated, the stain would remain. Patricia, my lawyer, called that evening. Shed received inquiries from 3 other defense contractors, all asking about the allegations against me. Derek's email was sophisticated, she said. Head created false documentation showing me receiving payments from Aegis Systems, one of Sentinel Defense's biggest competitors. Bank routing numbers, transaction dates, everything looked official. "Even with the recordings we have," she said. "Even with proof that Derek planted evidence. This could take months or years to fully clear your name. And litigation is expensive." "How expensive?" She quoted numbers that made my stomach drop. "More than we could afford. More than we could borrow. We'd lose the house long before we won the case." That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Derek's smug face, his absolute confidence that Head won. Head protected himself by making sure I couldn't fight back without destroying myself financially. Daniel held me while I cried. I'd worked so hard for so long, and it was all falling apart. But at 6 a.m., I got an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "I can help. Meet me tomorrow, 6 a.m. Lincoln Memorial. The email contained a code phrase: integrity, innovation, national service. Those were the 3 core values in Sentinel Defense's original mission statement from 30 years ago, before the company got big, before it went public. Only longtime employees would know those words. I showed the email to Harrison, who'd insisted on staying in a nearby hotel so he could be available. He recognized the phrase immediately. "That's from our founding documents," he said. "Someone who was there at the beginning." I agreed to meet. Daniel insisted on coming with me. We left Emma with Daniel's parents and drove to the Lincoln Memorial in the pre-dawn darkness. We waited at the top of the steps as the sun started to rise over the reflecting pool. A woman approached. She was in her mid-50s, professionally dressed, walking with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Miss Hartley," she said. "I'm Caroline Fletcher." It took me a moment to place the name. Then I remembered. Derek's executive assistant. She'd been with the company for 12 years. One of the old guard who remembered when Sentinel Defense was still small and scrappy. "I've watched him destroy everything your father built," she said, looking at me intently. "For 18 months I've documented every meeting, every decision, every crime." She pulled out a tablet and showed us. Recordings of Derek in meetings. Emails he thought were deleted. Financial records showing embezzlement. $230,000 taken from the company's discretionary fund over 18 months. Used for personal expenses. His lake house renovation. Vacations to the Bahamas. A boat. But more importantly, she had proof of the falsified evidence against me. She had recordings of Derek and Marcus creating it. She had the original drafts. The editing history. Everything showing it was manufactured. "I was waiting for the right moment," Caroline said. "That moment is now." She explained that the emergency board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Today, Derek planned to present his case against me, push for a vote to authorize criminal complaints. But Caroline had been busy. She'd contacted General Thompson and arranged for him to attend as a potential client. She'd reached out to Thomas, Patricia, Jerome, and Sarah, Derek's 4 previous victims, and convinced them to come. And she'd contacted a federal investigator from the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Service. "Everyone will be there when the truth comes out," she said. "But you have to be brave enough to walk into that room. You have to stand up in front of people who think you're a criminal and tell your truth." "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Because I've worked in defense contracting for 30 years," Caroline said. "I've seen good companies destroyed by bad leaders. I've seen talented people crushed by insecure men. And I'm tired of watching it happen." "Your father built something important, Mr. Caldwell. Your son was destroying it. Someone had to stop him." We spent the next few hours preparing. Patricia joined us, reviewing all of Caroline's evidence. It was comprehensive, damning, irrefutable. We built a presentation that laid out Derek's crimes systematically. Harrison coached me on the board members. 2 were absolutely Derek's allies, lost causes who'd bought into his vision of aggressive growth at any cost. 1 was on the fence. A businessman who valued results over ethics but who might be swayed by hard evidence. 4 were traditional members who'd supported Harrison from the beginning and who'd be outraged once they saw the truth. Daniel was worried about my safety. Derek had shown he was unstable. Walking into that boardroom felt dangerous. But I was done being afraid. This was bigger than me now. This was about every person Derek would hurt if he wasn't stopped. This was about the 4 people he'd already destroyed. This was about the 93 employees whose livelihoods depended on Sentinel Defense's contracts. This was about doing what was right even when it was terrifying. I went home and changed into my best suit. Navy blue, perfectly tailored. Armor. I looked at myself in the mirror and practiced standing tall, speaking clearly. I thought about Emma, about what I wanted to teach her about standing up for yourself. Daniel hugged me before I left. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Whatever happens, I'm proud of you." Emma gave me a dandelion shed picked from the yard. "You brave, Mommy?" "I'm scared," I told her honestly. but am doing it anyway. I drove to Sentinel Defense Headquarters with my heart pounding. The parking lot was full. Board members arriving, other senior staff. I saw Thomas getting out of his car. Then Patricia. Then Jerome. Derek's victims. All here to face him. My phone rang. General Thompson. Miss Hartley, he said. I need you to know something. Derek called DOD this morning. He filed an official complaint claiming you've been selling classified information to foreign entities. He triggered a formal federal investigation. My stomach dropped. Even if I clear my name at the board meeting, even if I prove everything, I am under federal investigation? Yes. And investigations like this can take months. They'll suspend your clearance pending review. You won't be able to work in the industry. Derek's final move. The one that ensured even if he lost, I lost too. But General Thompson continued. However, the investigator assigned to your case is already at the Sentinel Defense Building. Caroline Fletcher contacted him yesterday. Hess reviewed substantial evidence. This may not take as long as you fear. I thanked him and hung up. Took a deep breath. Got out of the car. It was time to walk into that boardroom and fight for my life. The Sentinel Defense boardroom was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was designed to impress, to project power and success. Today it felt like walking into a courtroom where I was the defendant. I arrived to find it already crowded. 10 board members seated around the massive table. Derek at the head, looking smug and confident. Marcus beside him. General Thompson standing in the corner, arms crossed. Caroline at the sideboard, setting up presentation equipment. Thomas, Patricia, Jerome, and Sarah standing together near the back. A united front, and a man in a dark suit I didn't recognize, sitting quietly with a leather portfolio. The board members stared at me as I entered. I could read their expressions. 2 of Derek's allies looked hostile. The fence-sitter looked uncomfortable. The 4 traditional members looked confused about why all these extra people were present. Harrison was already seated, his face carefully neutral. Our eyes met briefly. He gave me the smallest nod. Derek started the meeting without preamble. Thank you all for coming on short notice, he said. We're here to address a serious security breach. As you know, our former employee Nell Hartley has committed corporate espionage. He pulled up his presentation. Showed the falsified emails, the fake bank transfers, the manufactured evidence of me selling secrets to Aegis Systems. It looked convincing. If I didn't know it was fabricated, I might have believed it myself. The damage to our reputation could be catastrophic, Derek continued. I'm asking the board to authorize a criminal complaint and a civil lawsuit for damages. One of his allied board members immediately moved to vote. The other seconded. Before we vote, Harrison said calmly, I think Nell deserves a chance to respond to these accusations. Derek's jaw tightened. Dad, the evidence speaks for itself. Nevertheless, I stood up, my hands shaking slightly. I walked to the front of the room. Caroline handed me the remote for the presentation system. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board, I said, surprised my voice was steady. I want to show you some evidence of my own. I started with the security footage. The real footage, showing Derek and Marcus in my office at 2 a.m, planting files on my computer. The footage was clear. Damning. Board members leaned forward, watching intently. This is from 3 nights ago, I said. You can see Derek Caldwell and Marcus Grant tampering with my computer, creating the very security violations they later accused me of. I showed the email chain between Derek and Marcus, planning my termination. I showed documentation of Derek taking credit for my work over 18 months. I showed the 4 previous employees' head forced out. Then I played the recording from my house. Derek's drunken confession. Admitting to planting evidence. Admitting he never had proper clearance. Admitting he'd destroyed 4 careers before mine. The boardroom was silent, except for Derek's voice from the recording. Who needs clearance when you own the company? I showed Caroline's evidence of embezzlement. $230,000 in company funds used for personal expenses. Every transaction documented. Every receipt preserved. Finally, I showed Derek's clearance status. Or lack thereof. Derek Caldwell has been accessing classified information for 2 years without proper authorization, I said. This is a federal crime. And it puts every contract this company holds at risk. The board members looked stunned. Derek's 2 allies were pale. The fence-sitter looked angry. The 4 traditional members looked furious. This is absurd. Derek stood up, his voice loud. This is a coordinated attack. She's fabricated all of this. That's when the man in the dark suit stood. Agent Philip Grant. Defense Counterintelligence and Security Service, he said, showing his credentials. I've been listening to this presentation with great interest. Mr. Caldwell, I'm here to inform you that you're under investigation for multiple federal violations. He listed them methodically. Clearance fraud, unauthorized access to classified information, false reporting to federal investigators, and as of this morning, Agent Grant continued, you filed a false report claiming Miss Hartley committed espionage. Filing a false report to federal authorities is itself a federal crime. You've given us probable cause to take immediate action. 2 more agents entered the boardroom. They approached Derek, who backed away. This is insane, he said. This is a setup. Dad, tell them! Harrison stood. His face was hard. Derek, I can't protect you anymore. I won't. Derek looked around the room wildly, seeing no allies left. Even his board friends were edging away from him. Marcus was already being questioned by another agent. The agents escorted Derek out. As he passed me, he hissed, "This isn't over." But it was. We all knew it. After they left, the boardroom erupted. Board members asking questions, demanding explanations. Harrison raised his hand for silence. I take full responsibility for this situation, he said. I enabled my son's behavior. I was absent when I should have been present. I failed this company and I failed Nell Hartley specifically. He proposed immediate steps: external audit, compliance review, full cooperation with the federal investigation, and my reinstatement as chief technical officer. The board voted unanimously. Derek's 2 former allies abstained, knowing they'd been backing the wrong horse. The motion passed. General Thompson stepped forward. I'll recommend to DoD that Project Nightshade proceed with Miss Hartley as lead. Based on what I've seen today, I have full confidence in this company's integrity going forward. Thomas, Patricia, Jerome, and Sarah came forward. Harrison offered them their positions back if they wanted them. They said they'd think about it. Years of pain didn't heal instantly, but it was a start. Caroline was promoted to Director of Operations on the spot. Shed earned it. The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out, most looking shell-shocked. Harrison approached me. I don't know how to apologize adequately, he said. You showed up, I replied. When it mattered, you chose the right thing over the easy thing. That's enough. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Derek was formally charged with multiple federal crimes. He hired expensive lawyers, but the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus turned state's evidence against him, hoping for a reduced sentence. The company brought in crisis management consultants to handle the PR nightmare. Surprisingly, the defense contracting community rallied around us. Everyone had a Derek story, it turned out. Everyone knew someone who'd been crushed by an incompetent superior. Our honesty about what had happened, our commitment to making it right, earned us respect. Project Nightshade was approved. $800 million over 5 years. I signed the contract myself. With Harrison and General Thompson present, Daniel finished his dissertation and accepted a teaching position at a nearby college. The financial pressure eased. We could breathe again. Emma stopped asking if Mommy was sad. I was home for dinner more often, present in a way I hadn't been during those brutal 18 months building the algorithm. Gabrielle and my team threw me a party. 37 people had been ready to quit if I wasn't reinstated. Their loyalty meant everything. Harrison took a leave of absence to be with his wife. Her experimental treatment was showing promise. The prognosis improved from months to possibly years. He stepped back from daily operations, put a professional board in charge with me as one of the key executives. Before he left, he told me something I'll never forget. You saved my company, he said. But more than that, you saved me from becoming someone I didn't want to be. I was so focused on protecting my son that I forgot about protecting my principles. Thank you for reminding me. 6 months after that terrible day when Derek fired me mid-presentation, I found myself standing in my new office. Corner office. Window with a view of the city. Emma's drawings taped to the wall behind my desk. A photo of Daniel and Emma on my desk, next to the award I'd received from the DoD for technical innovation. It was a Friday afternoon. I'd just wrapped up a planning session for the next phase of Project Nightshade. The team was excited, engaged, doing brilliant work. Caroline had restructured operations to emphasize collaboration and transparency. The culture was healing. Daniel brought me lunch, surprising me at work like he sometimes did now, that his teaching schedule was more flexible. We ate together in my office, talking about Emma's upcoming birthday party, about his research, about normal everyday things. It felt good. It felt like we'd finally found our balance. Gabrielle knocked on the door, poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but we just got confirmation on the Pentagon Symposium. They want you to keynote. I smiled. Tell them yes. After Daniel left, I sat in my office and thought about everything that had happened. 6 months ago, I'd thought my career was over. I'd thought Derek had won, that privilege and connections would triumph over competence and integrity. I'd been terrified, desperate, certain that speaking up would destroy me. Caroline had been documenting everything, waiting for the right moment. Gabrielle and my team had been ready to walk out in solidarity. General Thompson had valued actual expertise over corporate politics. Harrison had ultimately chosen principles over family loyalty. Thomas, Patricia, Jerome, and Sarah had been brave enough to come forward and share their own stories. I'd thought I was the only one fighting. Turns out there were people everywhere waiting for someone to be brave first. The lessons I learned aren't complicated, but they're important. I used to believe that keeping your head down and doing excellent work was enough. That if you were good enough, talented enough, hardworking enough, you'd be recognized and rewarded. I learned that's not always true. Sometimes the system is broken. Sometimes the people in power are there because of privilege, not merit. Sometimes injustice doesn't fix itself. I learned that staying silent doesn't protect you. I'd stayed quiet about Derek's behavior for 18 months, thinking I was being professional, thinking I was protecting my job. But silence didn't save me. It just let Derek get worse. It let him hurt more people. My silence enabled his behavior as much as Harrison's did. I learned that speaking up is terrifying, but necessary. When I finally stood up in that boardroom and told my truth, I was shaking. I had everything to lose. My career, my reputation, my family's financial security. But I spoke anyway, because staying silent had already cost me everything. At least by speaking, I had a chance to make things right. I learned that you're never as alone as you think. When you find the courage to speak your truth, you discover others who were waiting for permission to speak theirs. Caroline, Gabrielle, my team, Derek's previous victims, all of them stepped forward once someone else was brave first. Injustice thrives in isolation. It dies in community. I learned that privilege without competence is dangerous. Derek had every advantage. His father's name, his family's wealth, his connections, his education. But he wasted all of it on ego and insecurity. He could have been great. Instead, he spent his energy tearing down people who were better than him. Privilege is a tool. What matters is how you use it. And I learned that institutions can change, but only if people inside them fight for that change. Sentinel Defense could have collapsed after Derek's crimes came to light. Instead, we rebuilt. We recommitted to our original values. We created systems to prevent future abuse. It wasn't easy. And it's not finished. But it's possible. My phone buzzed. An email from a woman I didn't know, working at a different defense contractor. She'd heard about what happened at Sentinel Defense. She was experiencing something similar with her boss. She wanted advice. She wanted to know if speaking up was worth it. I wrote back immediately. I told her about resources available, about documentation, about finding allies. I told her yes, it's worth it. It's terrifying, but it's worth it. Because here is what I know now. Injustice doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It grows. It spreads. It destroys more people. The only way to stop it is for someone to stand up and say, "This is wrong, and I won't accept it anymore." That moment when you stand up, when you speak your truth knowing you might lose everything, that's the moment you discover who you really are. Not the person shaped by fear and compromise, but the person you're capable of being when courage matters more than comfort. I looked at the photo on my desk. Emma, age 3, holding a dandelion. You brave, mommy? Yes, baby. I'm brave. Not because I'm fearless, but because I did the hard thing even though I was terrified. That's what bravery is. Not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. My door opened and Harrison walked in. He was back from leave. His wife's treatment was working. She'd be starting chemotherapy. But the doctors were cautiously optimistic. He looked better than he had in months. Wanted to see how you're settling in, he said, gesturing around my office. It's good, I said. He sat down across from my desk. You know, he said, when I built this company 30 years ago, I had a vision. I wanted to create something that mattered, something that served a purpose bigger than profit. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. Got caught up in growth metrics and market share. Forgot that a company is only as good as its people and its principles. He paused. You reminded me of what I was trying to build. Thank you for that. We talked for a while about plans for the company, about new projects, about recruitment strategies that prioritize talent over connections, about building something sustainable and ethical, something we could be proud of. After he left, I turned to my computer and started writing an article for an industry journal about workplace culture, about recognizing and stopping abuse of power, about the responsibility of bystanders to speak up. If my story could help even one person find the courage to stand up for themselves, it was worth telling. As I wrote, the sun set over the city. The office grew quiet. Most people had gone home. But I stayed a little longer, working on this piece, trying to articulate everything I'd learned. The story of what happened to me isn't just about one bad boss and one company crisis. It's about something bigger. It's about systems that reward confidence over competence, about cultures that punish speaking up, about the cost of silence and the price of courage. It's about the moment when you have to decide, do I accept this injustice because fighting it is too hard, too risky, too scary? Or do I stand up, even knowing I might lose everything, because some things matter more than safety? I chose to stand up. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. And it saved me. Not just my career, but my sense of self. My integrity. My belief that doing the right thing matters. If you're reading this and you're facing something similar, if you're dealing with a Derek in your life, if you're wondering whether speaking up is worth the risk, let me tell you, yes, it is worth it. It's terrifying and exhausting and you might lose things along the way. But staying silent costs you too. It costs you in smaller, quieter ways that add up over time until you don't recognize yourself anymore. Find your people. Document everything. Build your case. And when the moment comes, speak your truth. You'll discover you're braver than you knew and less alone than you feared. I saved the article and closed my laptop. Time to go home to Daniel and Emma. Time for dinner and bath time and bedtime stories. Time for the normal, everyday moments that matter more than any corporate title or contract value. As I gathered my things, I looked around my office one more time. This space represented so much. Not just professional success, but personal growth. Not just a job, but a purpose. Not just survival, but triumph. I'd fought for this. I'd stood up when it would have been easier to stay down. I'd spoken up when silence would have been safer. And I'd won. Not because I was special or exceptional, but because I found the courage to do what was right, even when it was hard. That courage is available to anyone. It's available to you. Whatever you're facing, whatever injustice you're experiencing, whatever Derek is making your life hell, you have the power to fight back. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. I turned off the lights and headed home. Tomorrow was Saturday, Emma's birthday party. Daniel's parents were coming. Caroline and Gabrielle and some of my team. A celebration of my daughter turning 4, but also, in a way, a celebration of everything we'd all overcome. Life wasn't perfect. Derek's trial was ongoing. The company still had challenges. I still had moments of doubt and fear. But I'd learned something crucial. I could face those challenges. And that knowledge, that certainty that I could stand up for myself and survive it, was worth more than any salary or title or contract. I'd found my courage, and once you find it, once you discover you're capable of being brave, that changes everything. Not just your career or your circumstances, but who you are at your core. I am Nell Hartley. I built an algorithm that serves national security. I stood up to injustice even when it terrified me. I survived the worst professional crisis I could imagine and came out stronger. And if I can do it, so can you. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to choose between staying silent or speaking up, even though speaking up might cost you everything? What did you choose, and what happened? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own courage. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button. It helps others who need to hear this message find it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming workplace injustice, finding your courage, and fighting for what's right. And share this with someone who might be facing their own Derek right now. Let them know they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you're braver than you think, you're less alone than you fear, and speaking your truth matters. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Take care of yourselves. Stand up for yourselves. And never forget that integrity matters more than comfort, and courage matters more than safety. Until next time.